And hello and welcome. My name is Martin, and today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding in an area for water. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is actually create an area of sunken in area for the water. It depends on whether you want deep water or not, but then the first thing we'll have to do is go to landscape. Let's grab the sculpt tool. Let's make the brush size somewhat big. Let's make the drop off something like that. Okay. So remember to hold shift, and what that's going to do is carve down. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Not much of a shoreline, but we want to have an area. So let's do about maybe a little bit more. Okay, so that's pretty good. All right, so what I'd probably do after this is I'd probably go in and I'd flatten, and there's really two options that you have. You can either have your character go into this area and be able to be a playable area, an area where they can actually do something, or you make it not an area, in which case you would put like a blocking volume right here so they could get close to it but not get all the way in, so then that way you get the aesthetics of having the water, but not necessarily having to have the player go into that area. The other thing too would be looking at the shoreline. This is a pretty rough shoreline, meaning that if my character actually drops in here, there's really no way for them to climb up. It'd be like trying to climb up one of these mountains here. So you may want to do a little bit of smoothing, create more of a slope somewhere, and then make sure that no matter where they fall in here, that they can get to that, let's say a ramp, and then be able to get out of this area. So let's do something like that. Let's sculpt this real quick. I'm going to hit the smooth. And let's see if I can't get a little... Okay, so my tool is really strong. Let's kind of soften the tool up a little bit. So that way it doesn't cut right into everything. Okay, and in the smoothing process, what's also happening is you're trying to make sure that you don't create something so deep that once the character falls in there, or once your player falls in there, they're not going to be able to get out. And not that everything has to be smooth. I mean, you may have an area that's a drop off, and then you can have an area like this that kind of smooths out, and eventually they would be able to walk up this. So let's smooth that out just a little bit more. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so that slope is pretty steep, but I feel like we might be able to walk up that slope if we fell down. This area back here, I don't know. Nothing seems to worry me too much. I feel like I could get out of that if I fell in. Obviously, I'm not going to get up that way. And okay. So to test it, obviously, I would take my character and I would walk through this entire area. I'm not going to do it right now. If I get stuck, I'll just hit restart and we'll start over again. Okay, so now we have the area that we're going to use for this. The other thing you could also do right now before you put in the water is go ahead and paint this. So if you wanted to, we could click on the landscape and then click on paint, go into the paint brush, scroll down, and I can imagine that maybe this would be like a brown dirt or a type of sand, probably not having green areas unless there was like algae or something, but you know, take inspiration from, watch a couple of National Geographics on ocean floors and see what type of different colors you see, how deep the water gets and what it feels like. what do different coastlines look like. Okay, maybe a little bit closer to land, we might, instead of it being dirt, let's try to switch that out for the sand. Oops, not that. Just pick sand. And let's make the fall off a lot. And let's see if we can't slowly fade that up a little bit. Try not to get those solid lines. It is not liking that area. Okay. Maybe we'll splatter some color in there. Not everything feels too dark, like there's a little bit of a blending. Alright, and maybe there. That looks a little better. Okay, so now we have our beach. We have that turning into rock and different types of sand down there. And now we're ready to go ahead and put in our water. Okay, so for putting in the water, what I like to do is I like to start off with the geometry. I'll make a really big flat geometry. I'll add my water layer to it, and then what I'll do is I'll convert that water layer, or I'll convert that geometry into a mesh. The reason I do this is because when I add it, when I add the image or the water to a plane and then stretch the plane out, what ends up happening is that the water gets stretched out too. So what I'm going to do is going to help in eliminating that. So we're going to go back to places. We're going to go back to a geometry. We're going to grab a box, and we're going to drag that and put it on the floor. Okay, let's go ahead and size this up. So let's make it, let's say 10,000 by 10,000, and it's probably going to have to be wider than that. Okay, it's also probably got, let's see what kind of, not really a fan of that color. Let's just go in here and type in okay, I'm just going to leave it like that for now. Okay, obviously this is going to be bigger, so let's try 30 by 30. Okay, that will definitely fill in the area. Definitely does more than what we need. Let's push it down just a little bit. Okay, that way it's filling in anything that is below whatever the top of this thing is. Alright, so then we go down. Let's see how close this is to the water's edge. Okay, and that's somewhat believable. Okay, so now that we have the geometry there, let's see how big it is in comparison to the rest of everything else. Maybe we could cut it down just a little bit. Actually, that does a fairly good job. It's extending a bit out this way, but the other thing you could also do is make this the same size as the area of the basin of this area of this the game area for right now, and then anytime you dip down below a certain elevation, you'll get the water layer or the water table. So if you wanted to do that, you could. Let me move this over a little bit, and for right now I'm okay and I'm happy with that. I know that if I need to, I can extend it out a little bit later if I feel like I want to make like more of a connection this way with the water, but let's leave the water all on this side. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to add the water material to it. So I'm going to go ahead and type in water, and I'm going to click on material. If you don't have it there, remember you can use your filter and click on material, and if you have it selected, it'll show up down here. And we have water, so let's scroll up and see what kind of different waters we have. If you have opaque water, that means that the water is not going to have a visible layer through it. So if we added that water right now, we would, if we went underneath the water level, we would not be able to see. If we looked up, it would just be complete darkness. That's what opaque means. Let's try clean water. There we go. So M water clean, and that ends up working out for us. Okay, but it is opaque, so when we look up, it's not translucent. Okay. So it is allowing light to go through. Oh, I know why, because we haven't converted this yet. Sorry, that's my bad. Okay, so now that we have the water layer on there, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and turn this geometry into a mesh. And what that'll do is when we look up, we'll be able to see through it. So with the water layer selected, I'm going to scroll down inside the details panel. And underneath brush settings, if you don't see it, there's the hide or show advanced. So let's click that. And one of the options that you have down there is create static mesh. So let's click on that. And since we're creating something new, we need a folder to stick it in. So I'm going to go ahead and stick this in my stuff. And if we wanted to, we could go ahead and call this water. Let's see, ocean water. Okay, and remember that you can't have any spaces between it. So if you want to separate it, use an underscore. Okay, so now let's go underneath the water surface, and we're still not being able to see through it. Let's figure out why. Okay, there's a black, an M black that's on there. Let's see if we can't put the clean water translucent on that one as well. All right, there we go. Now I don't sort of like that. I want to be able to see through my water. So let's use the same one. The one that's working is the M water clean. So let's click on that. And if you click on the little, what looks like the magnifying glass, it will actually take you directly to the folder that's in. And with that, I can now grab this and put it on the other side. And now I should be able to scroll down and go up, and I'll have a ripple effect on the top side, so it'll feel like I'm seeing like the tops of the waves. And if I go here, I'm also seeing the waves. All right, fantastic. So now we've got the water's edge. The only thing is obviously, well, it's very, very clear water, very, very clear water. Okay, so that water is very clear. Normally we would not see water that clear. Normally water has kind of a very like, especially deep water has like a darker blue, like a navy blue. That's why it's called navy blue, because it looks very much like the water, what deep water looks like. So what we're going to do is, because we're not worried about the ripples and all of that, because it's going to be, we're essentially going to put a plane underneath the level that we just created with the water. And what that's going to do is give us whatever color range we want underneath the waves. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let's go to Basic. Let's grab a plane. Let's add it to the area. Let's hit spacebar. And I only need to make it go up left and right. Let's go ahead and cover the whole water area. Okay, I feel like I've got it all now. Okay, you can now see that the water is not see-through anymore, although the water is now just feels white. Now the deeper we put it in, a little bit more contrast we get. Looks a little weird here at the edges, so we'll probably want to keep this just underneath it. Okay, now with the material that we have, obviously we want to go in there and we want to make a couple of different changes to this. Inside the water materials, there's actually this really nice one called and I can't pronounce that, but it's spelled C-A-U, like acoustic, but with a C in front of it. Caustic? Anyways. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to put it in as the shape for it. And for yours, it's actually going to be more white. I've already manipulated mine and saved it. I should have probably have copied this, made a copy of it, like duplicated and then made my changes to the copy, but that's okay. So with this selected, I'm going to double click on this. And up here at the top, there's one of the nodes. It says color. So if you click on that node and you select it, you can then come down here to Material Expression Vector Parameter, and underneath Default, you have a red, green, blue, and you can start adjusting that blue to whatever blue that you need it to be. So let's make it a deeper blue this time. That looks pretty much like deep ocean water. Let's hit Apply. Okay. And that actually looks very good. I like this. Let's go ahead and hit save and close. And we'll see now that we have the smaller waves on top with, I guess it's the more active waves underneath. That looks kind of weird.
I wonder if I can stop that. Let's click on this and see where some of this wave actually might be coming from. Maybe I can slow it down. Maybe that's too much. Let's rename it again.
Okay, that got rid of it. Okay, so I've got that nice blue. Beautiful. Okay, so that gives me a nice ocean, gives me the cool wave effects. If I get close to it, it feels realistic. Okay, now the only other thing that we want to do with this is we want to create what's called a post-processing volume. And what that post-processing volume is going to do is change the feeling or the color once we go into it. So imagine things like what a camera might be able to do, or the ability to be able to change the color, or the way that the color bounces off of objects. There's certain effects that you can add to it. So let's take a quick look and let's create our first post-processing volume. Okay, so in modes, I'm going to be in place. I'm going to scroll down to where I see volumes, and let's hit volumes, and let's scroll down until we see post-processing volume. So post-processing volume, we'll grab that, put it on a box, and let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. So based on the size of this area that I had to make for this, let's go ahead and say that this is going to be 20,000 by 20,000, by, let's say it goes about 10,000 deep. Probably not, but let's see how close I am. Let me make my camera go a little bit faster. Okay. So this is one of those situations where you want the post-processing volume to be below the level, so anybody walking on the shore shouldn't be able to see this. It should only happen once you go down beyond the water level. So let's go ahead and bring this down. Make sure that it's happening close to or after you would have fallen into the water. That looks good. And let's scroll it over the entire area. So let's bring that over this way. And it is a little short, so let's stretch that out a bit and stretch that out this way. All right, so now we have our post-processing volume. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into our post-processing volume. So we are now inside. Let's make sure that we actually have this selected first of all. And you know that you have it selected because you see that the gold bar or the box that we're selected is gold. If it's not golden, you don't have it selected. So if you have it selected, you are on the post-processing volume. You can also go to the world outliner and select it from there. Okay, so once we have it selected, let's go inside it. And since we have it selected, we can look at its details panel. And let's do something like, let's go into the white balance. Let's go color temperature. And let's start moving the color temperature around. Okay, so this kind of color sort of matches the color that I see up above. And that makes sense if I fall into it that I would see something that would have that type of coloring there. The other cool thing is looking up and out of the box, we get to see what the world above us looks like, and this is fairly close to what I imagine we would see. If we walked in, if we were inside of a column of water, whatever color that water was, it would color the light rays that are coming into the water area, and that's what you should see. So if I go in, I get this kind of a deeper blue. If I come out, I no longer see that. Okay, so inside this water volume, let's see what other types of effects we can do with this. A cool effect would be doing a vignette. So we did this one in class. Let's click up here and type in VIG. VIGNETT. Okay, so underneath image effects, let's go ahead and add that. And what that's going to do is darken the outer edges, which in water seems really cool. It's kind of a cool effect to do. It gives the idea of more density towards the outside peripheral vision. So let's go ahead and do that. I think the one I was looking for in class, if I'm not mistaken, is depth of field. Okay, so depth of field kind of gives us a little bit of a blur. Let's see if we can really blur it out. So if we have a low depth of field, we get very blurry. Let's see if, let's make it 2. Let's see what happens if we go to 30. So already by 30, we've lost most of the effect. Let's go back to 20. Okay. That's somewhat reasonable. You know, your eye wasn't designed to work in water, so the extra refraction that you'd be getting on your eye from the water that you're in would create a bit of a blurred vision. So that works out pretty well right there. Let's see if we can see what else this one does. Again, these changes might be in the lower range. Like this one was just a 20 degree, between 1 and 20 was really where it was at. Let's see, 25. Sort of like that too. Okay. Okay, another cool one to do when you're in water would be to get the refraction that you would get off of sunlight. So there's the sun up there, so I'm pointing myself. I have to make sure, obviously, that the sun is in the photograph, that the sun is in our viewfinder. Once we've got that, we can go ahead and add the lens flare so we can see it. We can add the intensity of the lens flare so we can make it somewhat stronger, somewhat less strong. We can also change the color of it, so we could go into tint and we can adjust. We have to add tint. Let's make it this deep blue that we have. Okay, so that makes sense, right? It's reflecting the same type of filter that the water is. Let's see. That seems less natural. That seems like maybe if you were trying to make it look like you were looking through a camera. Let's go the other way. Okay, let's try the threshold. Okay. Felt like there was one of these that would increase the number of points, but I'm not seeing it. Ooh. Okay, so that was a nice one too. The underneath film slope, I switched it all the way from, I guess what it was at default, which was 88, and I pushed it all the way up to the edge, which made the areas of shadow a little bit darker and more blue. Okay, so after experimenting, let's see the different things that I've changed. I put the bloom on, intensity, put a little bit of threshold on there. I don't think that really made too much of a difference. The exposure made it a little bit darker. Okay, let's see what else I made. I made obviously the changes with the lens flare that we went over a second ago. Underneath image effects, we had the vignette. Can make that a little bit stronger if I want. Okay. This is where I changed the color. Under color grading, I added the film slope at about a 1. That increased a little bit of the edge on the darkness. Okay, and basically just poke around, have fun with it, see what kind of different situations you can get, what different types of colors you can get. Maybe you go back and you feel that it's too strong or not strong enough, or maybe that starts becoming annoying and you want it to go away. So play around with it, see what ends up happening. Let's go ahead and test this with our player. So let's go ahead and push play. I have no idea where I left him. He's by the cave, so that's going to take a while, so let's just move him. Alright, fun day at the beach. Slope on the input on the inside is okay, so right off the bat, that's a little weird. We'll probably have to come down on that. We'll need to wait until we're actually deep enough in the water. And the other thing that's also happening is that we are walking on water, so that's not a good thing. Most people would not be able to do that. So let's go ahead and make those changes real quick. I'm going to select the first layer, and let's look to see where it's okay. Let's see which one of the two that we have selected. Okay, so the first one that we have selected is going to be the ripples that we have closer up to the top of the edge, and then we have this other one that's a little bit further down. We'll probably have to do it to both. So let's go ahead and click on the top one again. I'm going to, in its details panel, scroll down far enough until you see collision settings. You could also type in collision here and it would take you to the collision settings. Right now it's set to default, so we actually need to say no collision. And since we have the other one, let's go ahead and click on that one. Should put us in about the same place, and same thing, we want no collision. Okay, the other thing is the post-processing volume that we're using seems to be affecting us before we walk into the area. So it looks like it's about right there. Let's move this back and let's have it right on the water's edge, and we'll walk around the water's edge here too, and let's actually push that down lower so that we can't actually get into it until we've actually stepped into the water. So let's go ahead and push play. Okay, and let's see how that post-processing volume is affecting us now. Okay, so I can get to the water's edge. And we have a little bit of a delay on the water as we're walking into it. But once we're in, we feel pretty good. So at that point, it would just be adjusting a couple of the different layers So right there, let's say we have that, and then we have the blue and the water. So I feel like my head goes under the water probably almost immediately, like the water just boom. I'm under the first one, and I feel like I should be under the second one by here. So then it's just adjusting. So let's grab that blue layer. Let's move it just a bit above, and then slowly start backing it down. See how close we are. So again, push play. And I'm seeing more of this layer than I was before when I like. See if we can't find a good edge. Okay, that feels pretty close. Let's push play. Okay, my post-processing volume came in a little bit later. Okay, let's see where the top of that post-processing volume is. And that's what I mean. I mean, I could just sit here for hours just getting this right. So I'm not going to. I'll just leave it at this. And then at some point, and you know, the box and where the water's edge don't have to necessarily match up. It's where my head as the player would be, or where it would feel like it would be the right place. So let's see if this one feels a little bit better. So I'm pretty close. Okay, post-processing volume is about up there, and as soon as my head goes boop below the waves, I'm in. Okay, the other thing would be to check how far out. See, like right here, we would have an issue with the post-processing volume. And so you're going to have to do some testing, do some moving around. You might need to create 2 post-processing volumes. You might have to put the edge of the water lower. You might have to make the water be more square, like have more of a side to it. So anyway, so I'll leave you with that. This video is already probably long enough already. Okay, so that's it for water. Hope you enjoyed the video. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.